Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome and thanks for joining us on our final day of the Southeast Research Farm Virtual Field Days. My name is Josh Mickle, and I'm one of the Extension Field Agronomists here with Iowa State University, and I cover parts of South Central, Southeast Iowa. First, we're going to take care of a few housekeeping items. So during the program, if you have a question for a presenter, please use the Q&A box. The Q&A box is on the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. If it's not showing, you may need to click on the three little small dots button to activate it, and we'll cover as many questions as we can as time allows. During the program, you may want to, or we may use the chat box to share some links to other information. Your CC should be taken care of when you registered. If you forgot or you did not submit your CCA number at registration, you can submit it in the chat box on the right side of your screen. The virtual field days are brought to you by our research and demonstration farm staff, as well as our extension field staff. So with research and demonstration farms, we have Myron Reese, Cody Snyder, Dominic Snyder, and Chad Hesseltine. They work at both the Southeast Research Farm and help out as well at the Muscatine Farm. And then the extension field staff, we have Ryan Gioletti, he's a farm management specialist, and Christina Tabakhorst, she is our extension ag engineer. And then field agronomists, we have Virgil Schmidt, Rebecca Vitito, and myself. We'd also like to recognize our board members for the Southeast Iowa Agricultural Research Association. We have Dwayne Jordan, he's our president. Alan Mather, he's our vice president from Cedar County. And then Ryan Gioletti and Virgil Schmidt are our treasurer and secretary. And what's really important about our board members is they work with the research and with the research farm staff to help decide some of our projects and research that goes on at the farm. So today's program is approved for half a pesticide management CCA credit. Attendance will be verified by your login times in the Zoom registration report. Again, if you did not submit your CCA number at registration or you forgot, you can submit it in the chat box on the right side of your screen. So today's topic is multi-tactic approaches to manage herbicide resistance. Our presenter is Dr. Prashant Jha. He is our Associate Professor and Extension Weed Management Specialist with the Department of Agronomy at Iowa State. His area of expertise includes weed biology and ecology, herbicide resistance, and IWM technologies. So with that, I will stop my screen sharing and I will allow Prashant, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Can you hear me, Josh?
Yes, I can.
All right, so very good morning. So today I'm going to talk about some of the multi-tactic approaches and show you some of the research that we initiated in 2019 to 2020. I joined as the extension weed specialist last year, pretty much at the same time, May, June timeframe. So it's been almost a year that I have been at Iowa State. And prior to that, I was at Montana State University for almost 9 to 10 years. So we conducted a survey in the fall of 2019, and we also got some samples from different growers across Iowa. And that survey was for screening waterhemp resistance, the status of resistance as of 2019, since the previous survey was conducted back in 2012-13. So currently, out of those 250 populations, we have we are screening those for 7 different herbicide groups, as you see here. Group 2, the ALS inhibitors. Group 5, atrazine. Glyphosate, which is Roundup. Group 9. Group 10 is glufosinate or Liberty. PPO inhibitors like Flextor and Cobra. Group 14, HPPD, used in corn like Callisto. Group 27. And then also we are screening 2,4-D and dicamba, how these waterhemp populations are responding to 2,4-D and dicamba, as we would expect use of this 2,4-D and dicamba in our soybean production systems with the Enlist and the Extend traits. So to be honest with you, because of the current situation, these populations were collected back last fall, and we have been, it took us a good bit of time to get some of those populations growing in the greenhouse because of the dormancy associated with waterhemp seeds. So we had to do almost like a month of wet chilling before we can put those in the greenhouse so that they can germinate. So, and after that, with the current situation, we are pretty limited in terms of the labor and workforce that can work in the greenhouse, one person at a time, starting February, March time frame. So we are done almost with 35 populations with the complete screening of all the 7 herbicide groups. I would say like at this point, out of those populations that we have screened, 100% of those populations were resistant to group 2 and 5, atrazine and the ALS inhibitors, as you'd expect. 87% were resistant to glyphosate, and 40% of those populations were resistant to the PPO and HPPD herbicides. 20% of the populations that we have screened so far, they have survived the field use rate of glufosinate, Liberty, and another 25% of the population survived the field use rate of 2,4-D and dicamba. So that we used the 2,4-D formulation Enlist 1, and for dicamba we used Extendimax. Here is a kind of the picture on the left that shows the level of details that we are following in terms of screening those populations that are coming out of the grower fields from Iowa corn and soybean fields, I would say. In the middle, you see the waterhemp surviving 24 fluid ounces of Enlist 1. On the left-hand side, these block of cones that you are seeing with the waterhemp, these are the untreated check, and on the right-hand side is the treated plants. Although these plants are pretty well twisted, but after 28 days after application, we see the new regrowth in these plants that survived 24 ounces of Enlist 1. On the extreme right-hand side, you see the waterhemp, again, non-treated control on your left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, you see some of the plants that are surviving dicamba 28 days after application. So these are the field use rates of those 2 products, the 2,4-D and dicamba. So what we did is like we took those survivors, we transplanted them in the bigger pots under pollen isolation conditions, as you can see, as to prevent any movement of pollen, so that we can grow those plants basically for seed production and for under those conditions for further testing. So we want to keep an eye on those survivors, that 20-25% survivors that we got so far, and do some more screening for to detect the sensitivity to 2,4-D and dicamba. So coming to what are the approaches, how we are going to deal with this multiple resistant waterhemp populations in Iowa corn and soybean. Up until now, I think we have 5 or 6 resistant waterhemp reported in the Midwest. So it's even with the new technologies like 2,4-D trait and dicamba trait, I think there's definitely a need to preserve the utility of the existing herbicides that we have, and how we are going to do that. So targeting the multiple stages of the weed life cycle, that's the key, and how we're going to do that with a multi-tactic approach. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the importance of the pre-emergence residual herbicides, which will serve as the foundation for our weed management program, emphasizing on the multiple sites of action. And then I'm going to touch base on some of the ecological based tactics and the current research that we have initiated at Iowa State with regards to cover crops, crop competition, and harvest weed seed control. So I'm using a two-tactic approach right here: early season attack with cover crops, and then using the crop competition, 15-inch row soybean compared to 30-inch rows as in season, and then late season we have this harvest weed seed control as three major ecological non-chemical tactics. You guys might have seen this in the ICM News article. This is again a data a meta-analysis of the data for over the last 5 years. On the y-axis showing the % Waterhemp control from the group 15 herbicides, including Residual, Dual, Outlook, and Warrant. Pretty consistent control, as you see on the top. More than 90% control under optimum conditions. However, the size of the box is showing the variability in the level of control over the past 5 years for Waterhemp with these group 15 herbicides, as you see here. With lower levels of control, as you can see in these boxes, under suboptimum conditions. And again, these herbicides were used at the field use rate at each of the year. On the right-hand side, you see some of the PPOs like Valor, Authority, and the group 3 metribuzin. Smaller size box, pretty consistent control with these PPOs and metribuzin. So how we are going to avoid some of these low level of control that we get out of these group 15 herbicides or when applied as a pre-emergence. So the key here is to use multiple modes of action and enhancing the power of these group 15 herbicides using some of these tank mix products or premixes that are currently available. It's pretty much the same concept as the using post-emergence herbicides where we are using multiple modes of action. On the y-axis, you see the number of days until the Waterhemp reaches the 4-inch tall, which means they are ready to be applied with a post-herbicide. Dual and Sencor, and this is boundary, which is a mixture of Dual and Sencor. So basically, we are extending the residual activity of Dual and Sencor by tank mixing those two, group 5 and 15, by another 10 to 12 days. This is Residual, Authority, and Valor on your right-hand side. And then this is Authority Supreme, again, which is a mixture of Residual and Authority, and Fierce, which is a mixture of Residual and Valor. So basically, you are enhancing the residual activity by another 10 to 15 days using this mixture of group 14 with group 15 herbicides. So how we are going to place these herbicides in a 2-pass layered residual program. The approach would be to use group 3, which is pendimethalin or parole, group 5 metribuzin, 14 Authority, Valor, in combination with 15 as premix as your starting point as a pre-emergence residual. I would probably caution in using group 15 only because we are going to see some resistance to group 15 because of the enhanced use of or selection pressure from the use of group 15 in both the corn and soybean phase of the rotation. That leaves us the group 15 herbicides as an early post layered program with the objective to move to reduce the weed emergence or Waterhemp emergence, as we know that Waterhemp has an extended emergence period. So basically, we are reducing the reliance on the post application, reducing the size of the Waterhemp plants at the time of application, so that taking maximum benefit of the soybean. Coming to the cover crop ecological tactics, I think the main objective here is to reduce the size and density of for example, Waterhemp plants at the time of post application. How we can use these cover crops like cereal rye to Learnin to increase the management windows and enhance the efficacy of herbicide post herbicides, as well as reducing the herbicide inputs and selection pressure. Some of the long-term studies done in Iowa also suggest that cereal rye cover crop can also impact the weed seed bank in the long term. So this is the picture which one of my graduate students is working right now using cereal rye to suppress GR, which is the glyphosate-resistant waterhemp. And this research is being done at Brunner Farm, where we planted the seeded rye on October 10 of last year, and the rye was terminated pretty much at the nearby anthesis stage on May 22nd of this year. And the soybean E3 beans maturity group 2.2 were planted pretty much at the same date of May 22nd. On the left-hand side, you see the amount of water hemp pressure in these 30-inch wide rows of soybean. On the right-hand side, you see the amount of biomass that we can still get out of the rye with definitely pretty good weed suppression. So we are looking at different interaction of the cereal rye with the pre-emergence soil residual herbicide programs as well as the post programs, again with the sole objective to reduce the reliance on herbicides and mitigate the herbicide-resistant Waterhemp seed bank. So this is the research which is currently being done at Iowa State, and we will be having our first set of results by the end of this fall. The second ecological tactic which we are also looking at along with cover crops is narrow row spacing for soybean. Talking about on the right hand side, you see definitely there is an advantage in terms of adopting the blue bar is the 15-inch row soybean versus the red is the 30-inch row soybean. Based on some of the work which was conducted in Iowa, I mean, because of the early canopy closure in soybean, definitely there is an advantage of weed management advantage of 15-inch rows compared to the 30-inch rows. On the left-hand side, I'm showing some of the research that was done back in 2007-8 when we do not had any glyphosate-resistant palmer, amaranth, or water hemp. You see the different timings here of application of glyphosate at the V3 stage up to the R1, R2 stage of soybean. The yellow highlighted regions suggest that in 13-inch rows, since the soybean canopy closure occurred late as compared to the drill seeded soybean 7.5-inch rows, there were significantly higher palmer amaranth seed production, 600 seeds per meter square, compared to no seed production even with a single application of glyphosate. So definitely this shows that early canopy closure is definitely advantageous with regards to reducing the herbicide selection pressure as well as optimizing the control. The last tactic, which is the late season tactic, which I'm going to talk about, is another non-chemical tactic, is the harvest weed seed control. How we are going to use this system in our soybean-based production systems in Iowa. This is a picture by Dr. Hausler, the weed seeds blown out of the combine, basically a rapid method of spread of resistance across the whole field and among fields as well. This is a diagrams just trying to show you what happens at the rear of the combine. The weed seeds are mostly in the chaff fraction of the chaff and straw that goes to the chopper after the from the sieves down to the second level. So if we put a baffle right here that separates the chaff from the straw, we can direct this chaff using a chute at the back of the combine, just like this, and concentrate that chaff where the weed seeds are in narrow windrows, which are 12 to 15 inches wide. So this system has been extremely successful in Western Australia, where they're struggling with herbicide resistance, especially with ryegrass. And in the next year, instead of the whole field being a mess of ryegrass, we are basically seeing all these ryegrass pretty much right here concentrated in these narrow windrows. And then we can use some of these targeted weed control strategies like high rates of herbicide or a shielded sprayer application to control that ryegrass. So we started this work back in 2019, where we collected some soybean chaff in central Iowa, and we estimated the soybean grain to chaff ratio of 6.8:1, which means close to 7 tons of soybean will have 1 ton of chaff. We did some greenhouse research. On the left-hand side, you see no chaff with the counted number of Waterhemp seeds that we put with and without chaff. And you see the Waterhemp Emergence here. And this is the chaff equivalent to 40 bushels per acre of soybean. And this is the chaff equivalent for 70 bushels per acre of soybean. Looking at some of the results of the soybean chaff on suppression of Waterhemp Emergence, as you see in this picture, the green line is the no chaff. Then we had 354, which is equivalent to 40 bushels of soybean, 504 pounds per acre of chaff, equivalent to 57 bushels of soybean, and 618, which is the blue line right here, equivalent to 70 bushels of soybean. So as the soybean yield will be higher, the amount of chaff that you're getting at the back of the combine is going to be higher, okay? So we see a drastic reduction in the percent of Waterhemp that emerged over the 45-day time frame, just as a result of the chaff, which basically acted like a mulch to prevent emergence of Waterhemp. A significant reduction. And as the amount of chaff increased, we saw definitely the proportion of Waterhemp emerging over the period of time was significantly less. So yes, definitely there is a potential to use this technology in our soybean production system. Why I think this is going to be a good fit for Iowa soybean, because it is an inexpensive method of harvest weed seed control. We are getting each of these 2 units from Australia, which is about to get, we are going to receive it by the end of July. This is which is going to retrofit in the John Deere S series, as well as the SDS series commercial combine with 30 to 35 feet header. Easy to install with simple nuts and bolts. We have to put a baffle and this one of these chutes that goes at the rear of the combine. That's as simple as that. So as I said, like we are going to retrofit this these 2 units to the S series as well as the SDS series chaff lining chutes to those combine, and we'll be the first one to test this technology here in the US in Iowa, starting this fall. One of the other technologies that for harvest weed seed control, you guys have already heard about it, is the weed seed destructors. We are going to have one of these seed destructors by the end of this fall, and again, the basic concept here is the amount of seed that some of these weeds can retain at the time of soybean harvest. For example, giant ragweed 80%, palmer amaranth and common waterhemp can retain up to 99% of the seeds at the time of harvest. And some of the research done recently suggests that, I mean, at least 80% of the seed retention is still there for waterhemp, which basically we can trap all those seeds in this high impact seed mill and can destroy them with 99 to 100% accuracy. This picture here suggests, again from Western Australia, regarding annual ryegrass over 16-year time frame. The red line is just the use of his herbicide, for example, glyphosate over the entire 16-year period, looking at the ryegrass seed bank decline. And the green line here suggests when we are integrating a harvest weed seed control, and most likely this is chaff lining that we are integrating with herbicide, then within 8 years we can nearly achieve 0 plants per meter square as compared to still 5 to 10 plants per meter square. I mean, in the herbicide only system. So definitely using some of these integrated systems like harvest weed seed control has an advantage over herbicide systems only with regards to managing resistance. Some of the last piece of slide that I'm showing you here, and this research has been funded by Iowa Soybean and Iowa Soybean Research Center with some of the work that I was doing at Montana, using hyperspectral imaging and machine learning to detect herbicide-resistant weeds in crop. And this is one of the fields here in central Iowa with, where we flew the drone over this field. You see the water and pressure on the right-hand side is the hyperspectral imaging using a drone, which we flew across this whole field. These pink lines are the water, or the dots are basically the water hemp that you're seeing in this field. We're going to use more and more of this technology and try to test in other herbicide-resistant weed species as well in corn and soybean fields in Iowa. With that, I will take any questions if we have at this point.
Again, if you have any questions, please type those in your Q&A box. Okay, Prashant, our first question is, anyone doing a economic analysis of chaff lining versus seed destruction?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good question. So I think since this concept is new, we are definitely going to do this economic analysis of comparing these two technologies. Again, just from a technology standpoint, the cost of this technology, again, the seed destructors are going to be expensive in the range of $70,000 to $75,000. The one which we are getting will be costing us. It's made by ReadyCop, which is a company based in Canada, and we are getting some discounted price of $50,000, $45,000. But I mean, when we talk chaff chaff liner, we are talking about $5,000 or maybe less. So definitely, I mean, the cost chaff lining is definitely going to be much more inexpensive method of harvest weed seed control. But again, regarding the efficacy and how of these two systems, we still don't know all the answers yet. But these systems we are comparing not only here in Iowa, but also we will be doing some of the work under the USDA-led GROW team across the United States in the region.
Okay, another question we have for you. Are you aware of any field resistance to dicamba or XtendiMax or Enlist One this year in Iowa?
That's a good question. We encourage sending any samples by the end of this fall. Again, the testing is I apologize for that, is getting pretty slow but as of now, I have heard about failures from 2,4-D and dicamba, but we do not have any confirmed resistance as of today. But as I said, like in my first slide, as I've showed you, that we had some survivors from the 1x rate, that the field use rate, and we are growing those plants for seed. So until and unless we do the whole full resistance screening, it would be hard to say whether they are truly resistant or not. But definitely, as I said, like 20 to 25% of the population survived the field use rate of XtendiMax or Enlist One.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Prashant? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to thank you, Prashant, for talking with us about the different approaches to managing herbicide resistance. As a reminder, in case you did miss one of the other sessions, they can be found on the ISU Crops Team YouTube channel. And Rebecca has that posted there. I'd also like to remind everyone that we have some CCA training this upcoming Wednesday. But the caveat to that is you do need to be signed up by midnight on Monday to attend that training. And I would also like to remind everyone, if you viewed this session or any of the previous sessions, we'll be sending out an evaluation form, and we would really appreciate any feedback you have for us. And with that, thank you everyone for participating in this series, and we really appreciate you joining in. Thank you.